Imagine a recipe that is treated like scripture in every finance classroom. It says, "Give me the expected return of every asset. Give me the risk of every asset. Give me how those assets move together. I will give you the best portfolio. Not a pretty good portfolio. Not a rule of thumb. The best one." This is the Markowitz mean-variance optimizer. It is the machine behind modern portfolio theory. The idea helped win a Nobel Prize. It gave finance one of its most famous images, the efficient frontier. That is the curve where every portfolio is supposed to be as good as it can be for the risk it takes. Now walk into a real investment office in 1989. Ask a professional portfolio manager why they are not using this machine. They do not say the math is too hard. They say the output looks crazy. One run puts half the portfolio in a single asset. Another run calls for a huge short position. Change one expected return by a rounding error. The portfolio swings from one extreme to another. The machine is not confused. It is doing exactly what the math tells it to do. That is the problem. Richard Michaud's 1989 paper gave practitioners words for what they already suspected. The optimizer was not just sensitive. It was an error maximizer. It took noisy estimates. It turned them into firm portfolio weights. This is about a tool that can be right in math and dangerous in use at the same time. It is also about a habit every good investor needs. Never let a model be more sure than the data that feeds it. Harry Markowitz's 1952 breakthrough sounds plain now. That is a sign of how deep it sank in. He said you should not judge an investment by itself. You should judge how it behaves inside a portfolio. An asset with a plain return can still help. It may rise when the rest of the portfolio falls. An asset with a fine return can still hurt. It may pile onto risks you already own. Portfolio choice is not a beauty contest. It is a coordination problem. Markowitz gave that insight a machine. The inputs are expected returns, variances, and covariances. The output is a set of portfolio weights. The best portfolios sit on the efficient frontier. For scholars, this was a break with the past. It turned portfolio choice into an optimization problem. For working investors, it raised a rough question. If the machine is so good, why did real money managers keep using committees, limits, benchmarks, and rules of thumb? Michaud's answer was not that practitioners were behind the times. His answer cut deeper. Practitioners were reacting to a real flaw in the way people use the model. The optimizer needs expected returns. But expected returns are not facts. They are estimates. If you estimate stock returns from old data, the estimate is noisy. If you estimate bond returns, that estimate is noisy too. If you try to measure small gaps between asset classes, the noise can be larger than the gap. Think of two runners. You time them with a stopwatch that is off by several seconds. If they finish close, the ranking may tell you more about the watch than the runners. The optimizer does not know this. It treats every input as if it were exact. If asset A is set to earn 8.1% and asset B is set to earn 7.8%, the machine acts as if that gap is hard truth. It leans toward the one that looks better. It leans away from the one that looks worse. That is the puzzle at the heart of the model. Its best trait becomes its worst trait. It is built to exploit small differences. But in portfolio data, many small differences are just error. Professional investors were not waiting for theory to bless common sense. They had already built guardrails. They capped position sizes. They cut back shorting. They kept portfolios near benchmarks. They used equal weights or near equal weights as a start. They overruled outputs that failed the smell test. To a textbook purist, that looked crude. To a portfolio manager, it looked like survival. The less scientific committee process often worked as a rough risk control system in disguise. This was not a small fight over method. Pension funds, endowments, insurers, and asset managers all had to spread capital across risky assets. If the most famous portfolio machine could spit out wild recommendations, The industry had a real problem. The issue also cut at the model's standing. Modern portfolio theory promised discipline. It promised a way to swap guesswork for calculation. But if the calculation built portfolios no fiduciary could defend, the promise was not complete. Michaud's paper lives in that gap. It sits between theoretical optimality and practical investability. The next step is to look inside the machine and see why the so-called optimal answer can be the one you should trust least. Michaud's paper is odd in a useful way. Its main proof is not a huge market table. Its main proof is the way the optimizer behaves. He asks a plain question. When you feed a mean variance optimizer inputs that look real, how stable are the outputs? The inputs are expected returns. They are variances. They are covariances. They are also constraints if the user adds them. The weak link is usually expected return. Risk estimates can be noisy. Expected returns are worse. A few years of history can make one asset look better by luck. A different sample can flip the rank. That was Michaud's key move. He treated the optimizer like a machine under stress. You wiggle the inputs, then you watch the weights. Say a pension analyst studies 20 asset classes. The analyst estimates returns from history and market views. The estimates look sound on paper. One asset should earn 8.5%. Another should earn 8.1%. A third should earn 7.9%. Those gaps are small, but the optimizer lives on small gaps. If the asset with the 8.5% estimate also fits well with the rest, the optimizer may pour a huge share into it. If another asset looks a bit worse, the optimizer may throw it out. The output can look like a hard bet. The inputs may have looked calm and balanced. That is the data in Michaud's world. It is the map from small input changes to large weight changes. He also points to residual return. Total return can be ruled by broad market moves. Residual return asks a tighter question. After you strip out common market movement, what unique return is left? That split matters. A total return optimizer can chase the asset class that happened to win in the sample. A residual return view asks if the asset adds something on its own. That idea later sat at the heart of factor investing. It also shaped risk models. It shaped active return attribution too. The classic portfolio machine wants weights that look roughly like W equals sigma inverse times mu divided by lambda. Here, W is portfolio weights. Sigma is the covariance matrix. Mu is the vector of expected excess returns. Lambda is risk aversion. The formula is short. The danger hides inside it. The expected return vector mu is noisy. Sigma inverse can magnify that noise. Then the output W can look exact even when it rests on bad measurements. That is why Michaud did not focus on one return table. He focused on the transmission path. How does a small error in an estimate become a large portfolio choice? His central finding fits in one sentence. Mean variance optimization maximizes the effects of errors in its inputs. That line still stands as one of the cleanest warnings in finance. An optimizer is not a judge of truth. It does not know which inputs deserve trust. It only knows which inputs lift the objective value. If an expected return is too high because of noise, the optimizer treats that mistake as an opening. If another expected return is too low because of noise, The optimizer treats that mistake as a warning. The machine leans into overestimates. It leans away from underestimates. The efficient frontier was meant to show where no money is left on the table. Michaud showed that the frontier can also be the place where input errors get harvested the hardest. That is why optimized portfolios often look strange. They are not strange compared with the inputs. Given the exact numbers you fed in, the portfolio may be optimal. The flaw sits earlier. The inputs never earned that much obedience. Think of the optimizer as a trial lawyer. It cross-examines every asset. It finds tiny details that make one case look stronger. But if the evidence is blurry, the lawyer may build the fiercest argument around the least sound clue. Michaud also explains why clean math alone cannot save you. The first Markowitz model assumes the inputs are known. Real investors do not know them. They estimate them. That one change alters the whole meaning of the output. If a portfolio recommendation is extreme, the first question should not be what insight the model found. It should be which input error the model amplified. Later work drove this point home. In 2009, Victor de Miguel, Lorenzo Garlappi, and Raman Upal showed that a simple equal-weighted 1/n portfolio was hard for many optimized strategies to beat out of sample. That result sounded awkward. It was also just what Michaud's logic would lead you to expect. Equal weighting is not magic. It is modest. It refuses to act as if tiny gaps in estimated returns are precise enough to support giant bets. So the finding is not that optimization is useless. The finding is that raw optimization trusts too much. It needs humility from the outside. You can see the danger in the same simple formula. W equals sigma inverse times mu divided by lambda. Here, W is portfolio weights. Sigma is the covariance matrix. Mu is the vector of expected excess returns. Lambda is risk aversion. Start with mu. These expected returns are forecasts. They may be informed. They are still forecasts. Now look at sigma. This covariance matrix tells you how assets move together. When assets are highly linked, sigma becomes harder to invert in a clean way. In plain words, the machine gets touchy. If two assets act almost the same, the optimizer tries to spot tiny differences between them. One may have a slightly higher expected return. One may fit the covariance pattern a bit better. One may gain a small edge in the numbers. Then the inverse covariance step can turn that small edge into a large weight. Picture a steering wheel with broken sensitivity. A 1-inch turn should move the car a little. Instead, the car swerves across 3 lanes. The driver moved a little. The mechanism overreacted. That is what estimation error does inside a portfolio optimizer. The math has 3 layers. First, expected returns are measured with error. Second, covariance inversion can magnify small differences. Third, the objective rewards the asset that looks best after that magnification. So noise does not just enter the model selects it. That is the deep reason the output can get concentrated. The optimizer is not trying to diversify for its own sake. It is trying to maximize an objective. If the inputs say one asset dominates, it will choose dominance. If that dominance comes from error, the optimizer has no built-in way to tell. Michaud's cure starts by lowering the gain on the machine. One fix is constraints. Do not let any asset grow past a set weight. Do not allow short positions unless you have a strong reason. Limit turnover. Stay near the benchmark unless the evidence is strong. Another fix is shrinkage. Pull expected returns toward a common mean. Pull covariance estimates toward a stabler shape. You throw away some apparent information on purpose. You do it because that information may be mostly noise. A third fix uses Bayesian thinking. You start from a prior view, such as market equilibrium. Then you let new views move the portfolio only as far as your confidence allows. Black-Litterman became famous in part because it gave this idea a usable form. A fourth fix is robust optimization. Instead of asking which portfolio is best if the inputs are exactly right, you ask which portfolio works fairly well across a range of plausible inputs. Each fix shares the same spirit. Make the optimizer less sure of itself. The best way to improve the Nobel machine is often to make it less impressed with itself. Michaud did not stop with the diagnosis. He later offered a cure called resampled efficiency. The idea is easy to grasp. If your inputs are uncertain, do not run the optimizer once. Run it many times. Simulate many plausible versions of expected returns and covariances. Optimize each version. Then, average the portfolios you get. The average portfolio is usually more diversified. It is usually less extreme. It looks closer to what a careful human might build. It also feels right at a gut level. If the inputs are uncertain, the output should be less sharp. But there is a catch. Resampling is not a free meal. If you pick a different simulation design, a different prior, or a different test setup, the resampled portfolio can look better or worse. The method cuts one kind of fragility. It also brings in new choices of its own. Harry Markowitz and Nilüfer Uzman later compared resampled efficiency with Bayesian methods. They found cases where resampling looked useful. Bernd Scherer pushed back in the Financial Analysts Journal. He argued that the test did not settle the deeper issue. You can build cases where resampling helps. You can build cases where another prior-based method wins. The first problem was false precision. The catch is that some fixes can sneak precision back through a side door. The wider literature reached a steadier view. Optimization can be improved. There is no magic patch that works everywhere. Olivier Ledoux and Michael Wolff attacked the covariance problem with shrinkage estimators. Black-Litterman attacked the expected return problem with equilibrium priors and confidence-weighted views. De Miguel, Garlappi, and Uppel reminded everyone that simple 1/n is a brutal out-of-sample benchmark. Yuman Tu and Guofu Zhou studied ways to mix naive diversification with optimization. Robust optimization asked for portfolios that can survive input uncertainty. The theme stays the same. Practical portfolio construction is not pure maximization. It is controlled maximization. There is also a limit in Michaud's 1989 paper itself. It is a conceptual and method study. It is not a giant race across every asset class and every market regime. Later empirical work made the story more nuanced. Raw, unconstrained optimization is fragile. Constrained optimization can be useful. Shrinkage-aware optimization can be useful too. Dynamically updated optimization can help as well. That nuance matters. The lesson is not never optimize. The lesson is never optimize as if your estimates are facts. Michaud changed the business by making this failure mode respectable to name. He gave practitioners a rigorous reason to use the guardrails they already wanted. So what should an investor do with Michaud's warning? The practical answer is not to throw away optimization. It is to make doubt plain inside the process. If you are looking at a portfolio tool, ask what it does when the inputs get noisy. Does it cap positions? Does it use shrinkage? Here, shrinkage means pulling wild estimates back toward more stable values. Does it penalize turnover? Here, turnover means how much the portfolio has to trade as inputs change. Does it test sensitivity? Here, sensitivity means how much the weights move when the assumptions move. Does it show how the mix shifts when expected returns rise or fall by a small amount? If the answer is no, be careful. If you build a portfolio by hand, the lesson is even simpler. Extreme weights need extreme proof. A tool that tells you to put half your money in one asset class is making a strong claim. Before you accept it, ask if the proof is strong enough to back that claim. If you use a robo-advisor, Michaud is likely already in the machine. Most serious allocation engines do not use raw Markowitz optimization. They use equilibrium returns, constraints, model portfolios, risk budgets, or regularization. Here, equilibrium returns are return estimates tied to market prices rather than pure forecasts. Constraints are hard limits on weights or trades. Model portfolios are preset mixes built to stay inside known bounds. Risk budgets set how much risk each part of the portfolio may carry. Regularization adds penalties that keep the optimizer from chasing weak signals. The parts that make the tool look dull are often the parts that make it safe. If you use machine learning, the warning gets sharper. A model can spit out hundreds of return forecasts from hundreds of features. But if those forecasts flow into an unconstrained optimizer, you may have built a more costly error machine. Regularization is not a nice extra. It is the line between a forecast and a bet. The old puzzle from 1989 has a clean answer. Professionals did not ignore the Nobel recipe because they were timid. They ignored it because the recipe asked for cleaner ingredients than finance can give. Once you admit that the ingredients are noisy, the old habit of using constraints looks less like fear and more like judgment. That is the trade. You give up the clean shine of a single best answer. You gain a process that can live in the real world. Before you trust any so-called optimal portfolio, move each expected return up and down by a small amount. Then, watch what happens to the weights. If the weights swing hard, do not treat the portfolio as a solution. Treat it as a sensitivity report. That one step changes the whole posture. You stop asking, what is the best portfolio? You start asking, what portfolio still makes sense when my estimates are a bit wrong? That is a harder question. It is also the one that matters. An optimized portfolio is only as trustworthy as the doubt it admits. Michaud's warning is simple. When the inputs are noisy, the answer that looks most exact may be the one you should trust least.